Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 36 in the book of 1peter. It's the last episode number 36. A bit of a review here today. It's about things that 1peter highlights. First of all is that love covers a multitude of sins. And what that means is that love sometimes means that we pass over in silence. It reminds me of the passage from 1 Corinthians chapter 13 where it talks about all the things that love does, what love bears with people and the faults in silence. And that is something that 1peter kind of echoes. The second thing in lesson number 25 is giftedness. Giftedness comes in two big categories. You basically have a serving gift or a speaking gift. And either way, the area of gifting is where you're going to need God the most, not the least. If you're in a speaking gift, you're going to be desperate for His words. If you have a serving gift, you're going to be desperate for His strength. And His gifts are the display of the manifold wisdom of God. And the exercise of that particular area of competence should result in desperate dependence. Lesson 26 was about rest, that the Spirit comes with an effect. It's supposed to be of some use. We should be able to rest and be settled during the storm. God rests on me so I can rest in Him is kind of the big point. Lesson 27 is about leadership and specifically about sheep. Remember, sheep are targets. Wolves love sheep. And a shepherd's job is to be the guy that stands in the gap for them. Trouble comes to sheep, and without shepherds, I wondered, would there even be sheep as a species? Would they be like totally extinct? And there's nothing better than being under a good shepherd where you're fed and tended and protected, you're known, you're cared for, and you're committed to for your benefit. It's a wonderful thing. Lesson 28 is a caution, that is disallowing a particular ministry style of domineering. So God obviously desires content. He wants truth and He wants sound doctrine, and that's a very big part of what He asks pastors in the New Testament. But He also desires and He sees and judges the method of the delivery, the method of ministry. And so we need to be careful, even in the manner of the ministry. So yes, you're over those in your charge, but good pastors are not allowed, they're not at liberty to be domineering in their style. So a pastor's power is limited in scope. Why is that? Well, because it's God's flock. And a pastor's power is also limited in its method. So in its walking out, it's not allowed to be domineering. So in lesson 28, domineering ministry styles are disallowed. Lesson 29 talks about the twin towers of submission and humility. So 1peter talks about clothing yourselves in two ways. Clothe yourself with submission, that's from chapter 3, and then clothing yourself in humility, that's from chapter 5. So the way we clothe ourselves or adorn our interior life, both of these are directed in two ways. Both of them are directed, both submission and humility are directed towards people. They're going to see it. It spills over. So you adorn your interior and it comes out. They're also directed towards God. Both are commanded. So both are not optional in the church. And then both offer our protection. And finally, the biggest thing about why would I be interested in submission and humility? Well, this is the place where God gives grace in both of these, and they can be beneficial to you. So my point is I would recommend them. Lesson 30 is I am important to God, and He cares for me. Therefore, I can cast all my cares upon Him. So think about if, for example, God didn't care, then you'd be wrong about casting. And so we asked at the end of that is, what haven't you cast? Because either you have a wrong impression about God that he doesn't care, or you're not hurling your problems and your cares upon Him. Lesson 31 was a fun one. That was that you're in the Serengeti, not the suburbs. We talked about roaring lions. And when you're in the Serengeti, the rules are different. When you sleep in a pup tent, the rules are different when you're out there. So it's better to know the rules, even if they're just a little bit terrifying, than to not know the rules and to be devoured. And just one point about a sub point on that day was about suffering. So here's some teaching about suffering from lesson 32. First of all, don't be surprised by it. It comes to everybody. Secondly, be sharing in Christ's suffering. He did it first, and he did it well. Then be the same in the suffering of other people. So though we may suffer alone, we are not alone in our suffering. So the brotherhood, the fellowship is elevated as they suffer and I suffer and we suffer together. Next about suffering is be steadfast. If you're resisting temptation, which is one of the ways that suffering is literally defined, then you and I are going to be suffering on a regular basis. So be steadfast. Don't be surprised by it, and be steady in it. Point number 5 about suffering is let him be sovereign, or let God be sovereign in this call to suffering. So don't be surprised that he sovereignly calls us to suffering. Remember that suffering is short term. There's an after to suffering. He says that we're going to get grace, we're going to get glory, that there's going to be restoring after suffering. So don't be discouraged. It is short term, even though it seems like it's not. And then let's just kind of the big point about suffering is let's be good stewards of suffering as we entrust and watch ourselves. So in conclusion, then Peter, he says, give a kiss to those that are in the battle, and just this close that he has with warmth and affection. And so should we. So as we close here, I'm warmly inclined to you. I thank you for walking the book of 1 Peter with me. And if it's possible, I give you all a warm kiss as we conclude the book of 1 Peter. Thank you for listening.